Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. My name is Matt Olson. I'm the Assistant Attorney General for National Security at the Department of Justice. I am joined today by the United States Attorney for the District of Maryland, Eric Barron, and Special Agent in Charge, William Dobano of the FBI Baltimore Field Office. Today we are announcing a superseding indictment against 5 officers of the Russian military intelligence agency known as the GRU, as well as 1 civilian Russian cyber criminal for their campaign to conduct cyber intrusions. This superseding indictment adds to charges made public in June against the Russian civilian Amin Stegall. These defendants are responsible for carrying out the series of destructive computer attacks that are commonly referred to as the Whispergate campaign. This campaign targeted computers in Ukraine shortly before Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February of 2022. More generally, the indictment alleges conspiracies related to cyber intrusions targeting victims in the United States, in Ukraine, and elsewhere. The Whispergate campaign included the targeting of civilian infrastructure and Ukrainian computer systems wholly unrelated to the military or national defense. That included government agencies responsible for emergency services in Ukraine, the judiciary, food safety, and education. Seeking to sap the morale of the Ukrainian public, the defendants also stole and leaked the personal data of thousands of Ukrainian civilians, including by posting patient health information and other sensitive private data for sale online and then taunting those victims. They attempted to cover their tracks by pretending to be criminals engaged in ransomware attacks, leaving behind ransom notes demanding Bitcoin payments to return data from victim systems, data the perpetrators knew had already been destroyed and could not be recovered. And Stegall's involvement illustrates the Russian government's continued willingness to provide a haven for cyber criminals in exchange for such criminals being, quote, on call to provide support and deniability for its military and intelligence services. These conspirators did not limit their activities to Ukraine. They targeted computers around the world and used computer infrastructures of an unwitting U.S.-based company to conduct the Whispergate attacks. They went on to target computer systems in other nations, supporting Ukraine in its fight for survival. Ultimately, their targets included computer systems in 26 NATO partners, including the United States. Before I turn this over to the U.S. Attorney to discuss the case in a bit more detail, I will note that we are announcing today's charges alongside the concurrent actions of several of our partners. The United States Department of State is offering a reward of up to $10 million for information on the defendants. Over a dozen of our domestic and foreign partners have issued a joint cybersecurity advisory regarding this group's activities. And Estonia has announced criminal charges against several individuals involved in the same hacking activity, including 2 of the same defendants charged here today. The Department of Justice stands united with our partners and our allies in supporting the Ukrainian people in the wake of Russia's invasion of their country. The National Security Division, which I lead, will continue to use all of our tools, including our private and international partnerships, in order to identify individuals, take down the infrastructure, and expose the techniques that prop up the Russian government and that it uses to carry out its malicious and destabilizing activities. When it comes to countering Russia's cyber-enabled malicious activities, National Security Division prosecutors are operating as a force multiplier, along with prosecutors and agents throughout the country. Since Russia's invasion, we have conducted multiple court-authorized takedowns of the GRUs and other Russian botnets and malware networks. For example, this includes the April 2022 Cyclops Blink operation to remove GRU malware from infected devices, successfully dismantling the GRU botnet and remediating thousands of infected devices which Russia could have deployed against Ukraine and its allies. In May of 2023, the department executed the court-authorized removal of the FSB's Snake malware from hundreds of computer systems in at least 50 countries, undermining the FSB's global espionage program. And just a few months ago, NSD's National Security Cyber Section spearheaded the court-authorized takedown of a network of hundreds of compromised routers that the GRU had set up as a successor to Cyclops Blink. Even as our cyber adversaries evolve and adjust their tactics, we are taking action to counter them every step of the way. We are also bringing this proactive posture to disrupting cyber-enabled foreign malign influence operations. Just yesterday, the Attorney General announced the department's doppelganger takedown. That operation seized 32 internet domains used by the Russian government and its proxies to impersonate legitimate U.S. and foreign media organizations and to perpetrate a covert campaign to interfere in the 2024 presidential election. This followed an action a few months ago to take down an AI-enhanced bot farm that Russian intelligence was also using to disseminate information and sow discord in the U.S. and elsewhere. So today I want to thank the U.S. Attorney Barron, and the prosecutors in the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Maryland, and the FBI's Baltimore Field Office, the Milwaukee Field Office, and the Boston Field Office. Their dedication and partnership in disrupting this malicious activity illustrates the department's commitment to addressing national security and cybersecurity threats with action. And with that, let me turn it over to the U.S. Attorney.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Assistant Attorney General Olson. My name is Eric Barron. I serve as the United States Attorney for the District of Maryland. Today, we are demonstrating our commitment to protecting national security by any legal means necessary, with the unsealing of an indictment against 5 Russian military officers and 1 Russian national for their global malicious cyber operations around the world. On August 7th, the grand jury sitting in Baltimore, Maryland, issued a superseding indictment charging these 6 individuals with conspiracy to commit computer intrusion and wire fraud conspiracy. This indictment follows a June 25th indictment that charged Ahmed Stagal, a Russian national, with conspiracy to commit computer intrusion related to the Whispergate attacks on the Ukraine and elsewhere in 2022. The indictment alleges that these officers are a subset of Unit 29155 of the Russian Main Intelligence Directorate, a military intelligence agency responsible for attempted deadly dirty tricks around the world, including committing cyber operations beginning in at least 2020. The indictment alleges that these individuals used U.S.-based companies as their infrastructure, but adding insult to injury, these individuals not only used tools to scan for vulnerability 63 times on a Maryland U.S.-based government agency, but they also scanned our allies throughout the world, including Ukrainian servers and servers in various other countries. Then they used the Whispergate malware, deploying destructive computer intrusions against Ukraine and other allies. These compromised systems have no military-related role, including agriculture, education, science, emergency services, and they stole sensitive data, as you've heard, including health records. So we are acting because if you violate our laws, we will seek accountability. The public needs to know about the threat posed by cyber criminals, and these criminals need to know that their actions will not be ignored. We're accepting any and all information that protects the lives and furthers our national security interests. Rewards for Justice is a State Department program that now maintains a $10 million award related to each of these individuals. I want to thank the National Security Division and the FBI's Baltimore Field Office for its consistent and outstanding partnership. And I want to thank the FBI's Milwaukee and Boston Field Offices for their support, along with many of our international law enforcement partners. I also want to thank our team here at the United States Attorney's Office for the District of Maryland, including our Criminal Division Chief Alicia Washington and Assistant United States Attorneys Aaron Zielinski and Bobby Golderis. Next, you'll hear from FBI Special Agent in Charge Bill D'Albagno. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, U.S. Attorney Barron, for hosting us today. We thank you and Assistant Attorney General Olson for the collaboration, expertise, and hard work that brought us here. I'm Bill D'Albagno. I'm the special agent in charge of the FBI's Baltimore field office. Today is about partnerships, commitment, and accountability. We are here, yes, to announce this indictment, but we're also equally here to highlight the international coordination and robust partnerships with our allies around the world. This type of cyber warfare will not be tolerated. The scope of Russia's crimes cannot be ignored. Ukraine, the United States, and 26 NATO countries were all targeted by this group of Russian military. We are aligned in our unified response, and we will collectively defend against Russia's aggressive and illegal actions. The FBI and our partners call this investigation Operation Toy Soldier. Through strokes on a keyboard, these criminals crossed over borders into countries, hunting to find weaknesses and seeking to harm. The Whispergate malware attack in January of 2022 could be considered the first shot of the war. The cyber criminals sent a message with their malware, telling Ukrainians to, quote, be afraid and expect the worst. A month later, Russia physically invaded the country. These 6 criminals aim to cripple Ukraine's government and critical infrastructure by targeting their finances, agriculture, emergency services, healthcare, and schools. These same criminals are accused of repeatedly targeting U.S. computer networks, including a government agency here in Maryland, scanning it more than 60 times for vulnerabilities. They committed fraud in the U.S. by illegally accessing bank accounts and using U.S. company to carry out their criminal acts. The FBI, along with our law enforcement partners and allies, will relentlessly hunt down and counter these threats. We have worked closely to thwart additional targeting by this group. The 6 Russians in this indictment are not advanced cyber masterminds, but are adept at exploiting vulnerabilities that countries and companies can guard against with simple steps. In conjunction with this indictment, the FBI and more than a dozen government partners and countries are issuing a joint cybersecurity advisory. It details exactly how these malicious cyber criminals carried out this attack and what can be done to prevent it. This indictment is the result of years of collaborating with our partners in dozens of different countries and law enforcement in Europe. We thank each of them for their diligence and dedication that led to today. As you've heard, there's a combined $60 million reward for information on these criminals' locations and their cyber crimes. To the Russian criminals, the world is watching. You do not carry out misdeeds in the dark. We are united in identifying, prosecuting, and protecting against future crimes. Thank you. And I'll now open it up for questions. And if you have questions that are directed to any one of us, please let us know.
If you could just state your name and your outlet before you ask the question, that'd be great.
Jessica with Fox 45. I have 3 questions. The first one, you just said $60 million. Is it $10 million reward for each of them?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. Do you have any reason to believe that they are in the country or out of the country? Do you know where they could be?
They're not to believe to be in the country. There are steps that are going to be taken, though, in order to bring this indictment to fruition. And we will partner with Interpol in order to serve red notices and ensure that if they are in a location that can be affected, that we'll take those on.
Do you have an idea which country they are in?
These are Russian military, and I'll leave it, at that. But to say that wherever they are, the important thing is that we are working with all our partners, our NATO partners, to protect against this type of action, but also to have the impact that we want to have with this indictment.
And then my very last question, can you say which U.S. companies or agencies had their computer systems implicated in this?
No, we wouldn't cover any victims in this announcement. It's important that we, maintain their privacy in that.
You said that, Phil Yakovlevsky from WBAL Radio. You said that the USA government agency located in Maryland, they tried to get through 63 times. Were they able to get any information, or was it stopped? Was that part of how you sort of figured out who these folks were?
So, not necessarily getting into the investigative side, but scanning for vulnerabilities to try to identify ways to get into those companies or agencies is a manner in which overseas adversaries attempt to compromise the U.S. And what we do is we partner very closely with all our partner agencies and with all our partner countries in order to protect against those type of vulnerabilities. And in the Joint Cybersecurity Advisory, those steps are laid out as to how to best handle those type of vulnerabilities, but also the potential for those type of scannings as well.
And you said that Ukrainians had their personal information taken or stolen. Do you have any reason to believe that Americans might be affected by this, the average citizen?
I don't have reason to believe that. As you mentioned, this malware attack, Whispergate attack, on the Ukrainians, while was meant to pose as a ransomware that was meant to make them believe that they could recover their data, was in fact just destroying the computers. It was taking the data and erasing it, making those computers inoperable. They did extract that information from the Ukrainians, and that presents vulnerabilities. And that's why this is important for all of us to include, from Marylanders to Americans across the U.S., to our NATO allies, to understand that these vulnerabilities need to be protected, and that the potential of your personal information is the job of the FBI and our partners to help protect that.
Jeff Hager with WMAR-TV. If these weren't really cyber masterminds, even if you scooped up all 6 and paid the reward, what's to keep Russia from just pushing another 6 people into their place and filling that void? What keeps Russia from doing this?
Well, part of the indictment is also to impose risk and consequences to the actions that are being taken. And really, if there's a message that could also be delivered, it's to those that would potentially backfill those individuals. This isn't a place where they should seek to use their skills. It's not a place that we want them to be employed, and they should consider elsewhere, because this indictment, while it goes to Interpol, as I mentioned, if nothing else, landlocks these individuals into Russia, where they may be, or has them looking over their shoulders at any given time. So perhaps those that are considering this as a future employment or ways to have their cyber skill set, perhaps it discourages them from doing that. Yes.
That's right. If I may, to answer your question in a little bit, totally agree with the special agent in charge and as to why we bring this case and why we bring cases like this. First and foremost, it is to hold these individuals accountable. As Bill said, they are marked people now. We know who they are. There's a reward on their head, and we're going to pursue them relentlessly. So that's reason one. Reason two is to expose the techniques they've used, because when we put these techniques and tools that they've used into our indictment and we say we're going to back this up with evidence in a courtroom, that shows not only the Russians, but it shows our private sector partners on how to protect themselves. And then finally, the message is clear to the GRU and to the Russians. We are on to you. We penetrated your systems. The FBI, the Department of Justice will be relentless in pursuing you. And so you better pay attention to the fact that we have gotten to you and we are in your system. So that sends a very strong deterrent message, and we've seen that message take hold in other cases like this. So that's why we bring these cases.
I have a question. Kate Amara from WBAL-TV from the Can't Hurt to Ask file. I know you said you weren't going to talk specifically about victims, but the sheer number of federal agencies in our state begs the question, should people be worried that their Social Security information, health information, we have Walter Reed, we have NIH, we have the FDA, and yes, we have the NSA. Should people be worried that their private information was part of this? And my second question, the private company that unknowingly had their servers used, did they report it to the feds, or did you tell that company that they were being used? And what's the lesson there for every other company out there?
I'm going to turn it over to the U.S. Attorney on the specifics of the case. I will just say before I do so that every federal agency, every private sector entity, is at some risk in this current environment where cybersecurity just has to be a paramount concern, and that's why we work so hard to be good partners to the private sector in understanding the threats they face, sharing threat information with them, and again, when we have a case like this, bringing the case to bring the perpetrators to justice.
Sure, just to follow up, and we can't get into investigative techniques. I can stay within the four corners of the indictment and tell you that there were dozens of scans for vulnerabilities through this Maryland-based U.S. government agency and others throughout the world. It's something that our partners, our private sector partners, the public in general should know. Whether or not personally identifiable information was exposed, that's not a part of this indictment, but certainly as a general matter, the message here is prevention and intervention. And the message by this announcement is that there are many cyber criminals out there, some sponsored by states, some state and country sponsored cyber criminals who are out to expose and get at either a government or companies' information or our own individual information. And so that we should all be very vigilant in taking the necessary steps, recommended steps, best practices, so to speak, to protect our information.
And quickly, are you able to say which came first? Did the private company alert you, or did you alert them that they were being scanned?
Right, again, that's kind of outside the indictment and part of our investigation, but again, part of this announcement is that is one way that we as law enforcement are able to connect the dots, so to speak, in an investigation. When we have those public-private sector partnerships, we need businesses out there, companies out there to report when things happen. We need them to be vigilant about their cybersecurity infrastructure and collaborate with us and with one another. And that way we can gather evidence and bring an indictment such as this.
Thanks, everybody. If you didn't get to ask a question, you can just direct them to me and Angie over there. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.